Most economists regard consumers as rational people, comparing the costs and the benefits of acquiring products, and then making decisions so as to best satisfy their preferences. So, the consumer is king. Consumers dictate what is produced because they make rational purchasing decisions, and producers will only make profits if they produce what consumers want. On the other hand, marketers see the process of consumer decision-making differently and think that in many cases consumers act irrationally, with their motives unexplained by economists' rational choice theory. This, for example, makes it possible for people to be easily fooled by marketing tricks. But who's right and who's wrong? Where does the truth about consumer behaviour lie? Are consumers rational decision makers, or frequently conned, helpless victims of producers, falling prey to advertising and sales promotion? Should there be laws protecting consumers from firms, or are these consumers well able to look after themselves? If marketers are right, the consumer isn't king. The consumer is conned by the producer, who's the real king. Let's start by thinking about what is meant by rationality.
The most common definition of rationality is that consumers weigh up the costs and benefits of an action and only buy if the benefits exceed the cost.
Now, you shouldn't imagine that economists see people as computing machines going around the supermarket comparing the costs and benefits of different products. But the fact that people don't use economists' technical language to describe their thoughts doesn't mean that we can't use theoretical notions to describe human behaviour. They might still rationally compare costs and benefits.
Our theoretical notions can still be a powerful way of explaining consumer behaviour.
The good pool player keeps knocking balls in. The physicist can explain this even though he may be nowhere as good at the game himself. The pool player may not even understand the physicist's explanation, but he still succeeds in playing the game.
And similarly, the consumer may not understand the terminology that we use to describe her behaviour. But even though she may not understand the terminology, she would still be acting rationally in making the purchase.
In this film, we'll look at just some areas of consumer behaviour that are potential sources of conflict between marketers and economists. It's important to realise that the costs and benefits are compared by consumers as they perceive them. An action which might seem rational to one person, like smoking, or like buying a pair of shoes when you already have 23 pairs, may appear insane to another person. But if the individual feels better off after the purchase, they're acting rationally.
But rationality means rationality to the person making the purchase, not to you. If the person makes a purchase because she sees that the benefits exceed the costs, we would regard that as rational behaviour. So to most economists, consumers behave rationally because they don't buy things unless the benefits of the purchase outweigh the costs. What do you think about when you consider buying a product? You think about the costs and the benefits, and they're not just monetary. The costs will include not only the price of the product, but also the search costs and so on. And when you think about the benefits, it's not just its usefulness, but often it's to do with its prestige, its boost of self-confidence and so on. Buying a car is not only about getting something useful, it's also about a statement of who you are. And what's true about a car will apply equally to rational economists thinking about their bicycle.
People buy extraordinary things. I mean, I'm a cyclist, and I'm a snob cyclist. I buy cycling equipment. There are cheap bikes and expensive bikes. A lot of expensive bikes. For the last 5 or 6 years, cycling has expanded enormously. And people get satisfaction out of consuming very, very expensive cycles, even though they're not going to be racing them or, other people may say, what on earth is that all about? Why would anybody spend £4,000 on a pedal bike? But they do in large numbers. I haven't quite done that, but I can understand it, So satisfaction there it's multidimensional.
The third possible source of conflict is inadequate information. Now, consumers can often buy whatever information they require, simply spend time and money getting the information in order to make sensible choices. But other times, the information is either inaccessible or simply unavailable.
Another category, though, might be products that are very complex. Let's take, for example, pension products, something that I had to learn about in the last 18 months for personal reasons, for obvious reasons. And these are complex products, and it does take a long time, and I do have some understanding of finance, to get an understanding of pension products such that you can make rational choices about things like annuities. Now, that requires a lot of effort, and I think the point that came through to me in that is that if we say that caveat venditor should be applied only to vulnerable groups, that there are some respects in which each one of us is in a vulnerable group. And so most people would be perfectly happy, people of my age would be perfectly happy going out and buying consumer electronics products and that sort of thing. They're used to be able to look up on the internet about user reports and that kind of thing. But everybody will encounter things like pension products where we've had no need to think about them for decades, and then suddenly there's a very complex thing to take on. And so I guess just because you are mainly not in a vulnerable group does not mean that you are going to be not in need of protection at any time.
But here, many economists would feel that you don't need to know everything about the products. You only need to know that you don't know everything. You can then buy information. In this case, it would be from independent advisors.
As we've seen, the cost to a consumer of buying a product isn't just the price they pay, but it also includes all the searching for the information in order to make a rational decision. Those costs we call the transactions costs. And sometimes the transactions costs are just too high.
Would it make sense to spend hours and hours on price comparison websites to get a 5% lower price on car insurance? That might be rational for some, but not for others who value their time highly. They would rather pay the higher price and avoid some transactions costs. Does this make us irrational? Not at all. The benefits have to outweigh the costs to make the purchase sensible. And the costs include not only the product price, but the transactions costs.
One recent study found that consumers think that 1/3 saving is the same as being given 1/3 more of the product for your money, whereas in fact 1/3 off the price is a substantially better deal. The human mind has limits. Not everyone is capable of making a decision based on weighing the costs and the benefits.
Ashke Rao of the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management, in an experiment on his undergraduates, offered 2 deals on loose coffee beans. 33% extra free or 33% off the price. The discount is by far the better proposition, but the supposedly clever students viewed them as equivalent. So maybe there's a case for government protection. But can governments protect people from themselves? It's not just complex calculations, but also sheer choice.
People find that they get confused and find it harder to make a choice. So they prefer rationally to restrict their choice in order to make the purchasing decision easier. A study of consumer behaviour with regard to the purchase of jam found that as the number of options available to consumers increases, they buy more, but beyond some point, widening the choice causes them to buy less. They become confused and don't feel able to make a sensible decision. So consumers prefer rationally to restrict their choice in order to make their purchasing decision more easy.
It can be argued that expenditure changes with choice in a non-straightforward manner. We prefer, rationally, to restrict our choice in order to make decisions more easily.
So are consumers rational? Is there a significant difference between marketers and economists about consumer behaviour? Do people finish up buying goods that they neither need nor want?
Consumers clearly make mistakes. They buy things that they then regret. Does that make them irrational? Do you think that people learn from such mistakes? Your car won't run properly. You find a mechanic who sorts it out for you and charges you £300. It now runs beautifully. It took him only 10 minutes to replace a small and cheap part, but he didn't tell you this. Do you see this kind of incident as one raising problems for a market system? If so, what are those problems? Many marketers claim that raising price can lead to an increase in the quantity demanded. Most economists insist that demand curves are negatively sloped. Who is right? And what evidence can you quote in support of your view? Here's an example of what is called double discounting. A product has been reduced by 20% and then by an additional 20%. How does the discounted price compare with the price of a product that has been subject to a one-off 40% reduction? Would you expect most people to be fooled? Some groups of consumers, such as children, can be regarded as vulnerable and in need of protection from companies who would otherwise exploit them. Are there other vulnerable groups? Indeed, are all consumers vulnerable? Information on contents is often to be found on food products. Companies are obliged to provide this information. What are the costs and benefits of making companies reveal such information?